Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Higher Moment Mastermind. I'm Sheryl Lotzar, joined by my colleague, Vern Schellinger. We are here to answer your job search questions. So Kretha and Sally, I know that you're both new here.
Yes.
And again, normally we have some more regulars, but we're happy to help the both of you. And the way this works is it's literally an open Q&A. All right. So
Oh.
any job search question you have, I mean, literally anything. Vern and I are here to help. We are both very experienced in the field. I am a longtime recruiter and a longtime career coach. Vern is a former HR executive and a longtime career coach. And so this is what we do. So we're happy to help. So feel free to just open up just whatever job search questions on your mind.
I've heard that you're not supposed to talk about salary in interviews. And a lot of times on LinkedIn, the job postings have you fill in the salary that you request.
Yeah. Okay.
And
So
you can't get bypassed it. You have to fill it in.
right.
It's a forced response.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So just so you know, there is a new trend out that's called pay equity. Okay. So I'm going to actually address your question, but I'm going to answer it the long way. Okay. So for a number of years now, different states in the union have been trying to level set pay levels for people across the board, right? So that anybody who's considered a marginalized candidate, women, it's really started out with women mostly, but anybody who's marginalized would have a fair shot, okay, to level out pay scales. And so what's been happening is different states have been adopting different laws. California, as you might imagine, is very progressive. Colorado, New York, Washington State, but there are about 15 others as well that are kind of in this direction. And what it looks like is various versions of, okay, number one, no longer asking candidates what their salary history is. Because if you think about it, if you're a marginalized person, chances are you have a lower salary. And if an employer says, what was your salary history? It's down here. Guess what the employer's going to pay you down here. So it's going to keep you suppressed, right? So most of those states are like saying, okay, at the very least, don't ask candidates salary history. The most progressive of those states are actually telling employers, not only can you not ask the salary history, you must post the range, either one number or the range. Okay. Now that's not what you're talking about. Your questions are actually right in the middle there. But on the one extreme, you will continue to see more and more positions actually post a number, which means that you don't have to deal with saying what you're looking for. They're actually telling you what they can afford. And then their job is to say, hey, Kretha, hey, Sally, hey, Scott, are you in our range? Then it's your job to say yes or no or whatever, but they're actually supposed to post it. In fact, in Colorado, they're so strict about it that if you're an employer anywhere in the country and you want to hire people from Colorado, you, the other state, have to post the range if you want to hire Coloradans. I mean, it's like, they're very extreme about it. So this thing in the middle around, what are your requirements? As long as that state permits it, meaning that they're not California near, they can do that. All right. So I just want you to know that there is a trend here. So probably over time, we're going to see more and more states actually no longer ask you that question. So this is not, so anything I addressed today is probably temporary. Okay. So just hopefully soon it'll start to go away. But for the moment, yes, if they ask you what your requirements are, presuming that state allows it, you should answer it. Now, are there ways to get around it? Yes. I mean, depending upon the field, right? You could say negotiable, that kind of thing. Here's the challenge with that. When you say negotiable, either verbally or in writing, it's a little bit tough for the employer because they need to know if they're maximizing their time with you, right? Because if you just say negotiable, you could be $50,000 off. And then that's not a good use of anybody's time, right? So that's why somebody's got to speak first. Typically, it's been this job seeker. Okay. Oh, here's Sandra. She can tell us about her salary negotiations. Typically, it's been the job seeker. Now, of course, it's more the employer, but somebody's got to say, is this worth even pursuing? Because what's happened is over the years, right? If nobody says anything, guess what? And you might have been in the situation yourselves. You get all the way to the end of the process. they make you this offer, nobody's talked about salary, and you're $50,000 off, right? So that's not a good use of anybody's time. So in this case, they're putting it on you. So should you answer yes? For your own sake, even, okay? Because you don't want to waste your time in pursuing something that's completely, off base. The question is, what do you say? That's more to the point. It's not even just should you answer, it's how do you respond? And so I have this concept of a formula that I use that you're welcome to write down. And it kind of goes like this, all right? If by the way, this is if you're allowed to write a whole sentence, okay? If you're not, we can modify it. But if you're allowed to write a sentence, it would sound something like this. I'm seeking a total cash compensation package in the blank range. Now, let me explain to you what I mean by blank range. You're going to put a number in that blank. But here's the theory before I tell you how to fill it out. So it's kind of like buying and selling a house. Okay. One side wants to get as much as possible. One side wants to pay as little as possible. Same thing with job search. The employer wants to pay as little as possible. You want to get as much as possible. So if you were to put in that blank 2 numbers, what's the number they're going to offer you? The low one, right? They're going to get away with it's a business decision for them. They're going to get away with whatever they can. So instead of that, you put in 1 number, but you make it your top number, what I call the happy dance number. So let's say your range, your internal range, like is 90 to 110. Okay. You're going to put down, I'm seeking a total cash comp package in the $110,000 range. I'm only using the word range as a euphemism for in that general vicinity. I'm not literally talking about a range of 2 numbers, just kind of generally, I'm looking for around 110. You're not going to say the 90, but you also know that you have some flexibility with that. Personally you do. So that if they come back and say, well, we can't quite do 110, the most we can do is 100, you can say, look, as I mentioned, I'm seeking a total compensation, a total cash compensation package in the 110 range. Can we discuss benefits? Because then it's a total package that you're asking for, right? So first you're just going to say a number, but if they say that their top, that they can't meet your top, then you can fall back on the first part of the sentence and say that you're looking for a package, and then you can talk about benefits up front. So you're kind of pre-negotiating a little bit. Okay. Now, how do you figure out the number? That's a different story. And that's a little bit more complex because the market changes. There's the different industries pay different things, size of organization, location. Florida is different than DC. I mean, like there's a million variables. So obviously I can't on a public call like this specifically advise you. But there are ways to do it. Obviously, salary.com, Glassdoor are 2 okay places to look. Nothing's exact, right? Because they kind of estimate, but talk to colleagues. Think about just your own, even just your own salary history. You can talk to HR people. You can, former HR people. There are ways to do it, but you've got to really kind of look at the market and ask a lot of people to see, kind of figure out what an appropriate realistic top number is for what you're looking for. Your profession, the industry, the size, the location, like all of those things matter. Whatever you do, go for the top end because you can always negotiate down. You can't negotiate up. All right, so that's a very long answer for you, but I wanted to go into that detail because most people have salary related questions, and every once in a while we deal with salary here. So I figured it was worth a longer answer. Vern?
Yep. I'll just echo what Shira said. Research. Talk to people. Go to salary.com. Go to Glassdoor. Sometimes as you're, if you're searching for jobs and you're online, sometimes the job descriptions will have a range there. Not very often, but if they do, and it's in your field and it's comparable, that's another data point. That's not the be all and end all, but at least it's a data point to get some idea what in your particular industry or your particular profession, what's this going range for a director of X or a vice president of X.
Yes. What was the sentence again?
Yeah,
Shira?
I'm seeking a total cash compensation package in the, and then here's the blank, that top number range. But it's not really a range. It's not two numbers. It's just, it's the equivalent of saying I'm seeking a total cash compensation package around 110. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So Sandra has a story to share with us. You're on mute, Sandra.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah. So this week I was interviewing, well, I had gone through 2 rounds of interviews with the company. It was great cultural fit, and they had extended me an offer. And it was significantly below market, and certainly below what my experience would allow me to accept. So I came back and asked them, could we do, and they told me up front, they said, before you say no, let me send you my benefit summary. And I thought, well, that's unusual before I say no, but I was like, okay, great. And they told me the range, and they said, that's not the range. They gave me a figure and said, that's all we can do. So I looked it over that night, prayed about it. And then that night, I also talked with Shira. And thank you for Shira, because what I was thinking about doing, I have been out of work for a very long time, for golly, over a year, going on a year and a half. So that factors into the decision as to whether or not to take an offer. But Shira had reminded me before I was in desperate mode, I would not have taken an offer knowing that I would take it because I need something to pay my bills and still keep looking. But then, thank you, Shira, for reminding me that no, that's not the way we roll. So I gave him my number the following morning, and it's been over 24 hours. I didn't hear anything at all from him yesterday. Mm-hmm. So
and did you, I know we're not going to talk specific numbers here, but did you just go like a little bit, like how did you phrase it?
Oh, I'm sorry. So yeah, so what I did was I was like, Sally, thank you very much. I called her, and I emailed after I got the offer. And then the agreement was I would talk to her the next day. So the next day I called her, thanked her again for the offer and the summary of benefits. And I said to her, I know the X figure is what you can do. However, I'm looking for a range of, between these two numbers. And it was $25,000 range. So it wasn't a huge range. And then she told me, she says, well, I don't think we can do that. I said, well, let me ask you this, Sally, how did you come to that? And she said, well, that's the range we've been using. What the range she gave me, the 2 figures, the number she gave me was the highest at that range. Okay. And she says, this is the range we've been using for the last 3 years for the role. Mm-hmm. And keep in mind, that's 3 years. So I'm like, okay. And she says, well, what I can do is I can go back and have another conversation. Right. And I think the most they're going to go is X, which would be $5K above that number she gave me initially.
Right. That's what I figured.
And I said, well, pardon me, Shia?
Yeah, that's what I kind of figured. Because when you told me the numbers, I was like, maybe they'll do a little squitch, Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yes. And I said, well, I would really appreciate that. And then I said to her, with the range I gave her, I said, well, I said, you have me at X figure, which I shouldn't have done. Which is still more than that 5K. So I took the basically the middle of the range, which was what I initially gave them, and said, this is what you can have me at. So she's like, well, I will go back to the CEO and I'll get back with you. So that's again, like I said, it was over 24 hours.
That's not surprising, because she has to get the CEO and talk to them and think about it. And yeah, that's not surprising that you haven't heard in 24 hours at all. Yeah. But did you make that little 5K bump that she said we might be able to do? Did you indicate that you might be flexible for that? Or were you saying, I cannot take that, I need more than that?
The latter. I nicely said that you have me at this number, and the number I gave her was less. That was the bottom. It was a minimum of my range initially.
Oh, you gave her the bottom of your range.
Correct.
Which was so I know we're being cagey here with the numbers, but basically they started at this number. The bottom of your range was this number, right?
Right. Mhm,
She said we could possibly do this number,
mhm,
which means she's thinking that she can't even get you for this number, that they would have to come to this number,
mhm.
which is the bottom of your range. Yeah.
Right.
And so that
And
it says that says to me you're willing to walk away if they can't meet this.
right, within a teeny bit. If it's close, then that's okay. It's a great culture. I can help them. I think it
Right.
would work. We would do good things together.
Yeah.
So for just a small difference, go ahead. I can do that.
Yeah.
But I also have to remind myself that of my value, not to be egotistical. It's, you
Yeah.
know, it's because I know, because years ago, I had accepted a salary significantly less than the market. And the company said, come join us, we like you. Because I started out as a consultant. They said, come join us, we like you, stick with us, we'll do great things together. We grow and we'll give you more. And that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So I said, I can't do this again. And then
Yeah,
because I was
right.
there for 5 years, and so for years, people
Yeah.
would come in and I'm still below market, and
Yeah.
it just ate away at me. And
Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah.
but
These are all the
I also want to,
considerations that we got to think about, right? Because
Yeah.
once you accept it,
yes.
you accept it. And then that is what it is. And you can't expect
Yeah.
anything more than COLA increases, really.
Yeah.
Right. And this is a growing company. So they said, well, we talked about during the interview, if we expand our HR team, and then you could possibly move into heading HR or heading talent acquisition. Again, those are possibilities.
Possibilities.
And it might be 3 years, it might be 6 months, which I probably doubt, unfortunately. But I did, when I came into the call this morning, and I heard you talk about discussing the salary up front. And normally that is discussed at the very beginning. So I allowed it to go this far, where in the beginning, next time when I'm called, I'll say, Sally, thanks for calling. I'm so excited about this opportunity. Can you tell me what the range is, what the salary is? And then that would help me out a lot.
So Sandra's interesting because right before you jumped on, Kretha was asking this is the question that Kretha asked. Because she said, well, what about, she went online and people are now, I've been asking, what is your salary expectation? So I gave this whole, you've heard my speech around pay equity and all this stuff.
Mhm.
And so, because Kretha opened up saying, well, I know we're not supposed to talk about salary. Now, Sandra, you're saying, by the way, Kretha, Sandra is actually a recruiter, or she's an HR person and also a recruiter. So she actually is from the sector.
Yes, I've met Sandra through another group.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, the whole idea of should you bring up salary in yesteryear? No, like there wasn't Couth, you don't do that. These days it's different, right? Things are changing. So it's actually okay, I believe it's okay. So there's one of two things you can do. If you want to address salary early on and the employer is not, right, bringing it up, one of two things. Either, yes, you can go right into the wind and say, look, Mr. Employer, and you wouldn't do this like in the first 5 minutes. Wait until the end of the conversation. Okay. So look, this has been great meeting with you. I'm very excited about this opportunity to help you make so that we can both make a good decision here. All right. Around this opportunity. Would you feel comfortable sharing the budgeted salary, the budgeted range for this role? You could ask that. And these days, 5 years ago, I would not have suggested that. These days, you can get away with it. If you really, really want to be, appropriate and not put the employer on the spot, and you don't have to do this, but if you are okay with this, you could say, this is what I used to say 5 years ago. Look, to help you make a good decision, Mr. Employer, what I'd like to do is share with you the compensation I'm looking for to see if it's in your range. That's still putting the onus on yourself. Employer feels nice and comfy, cozy with this. You're not putting pressure on them. Again, you don't have to do this, but you could. And that's when you would use that expression. I just wanted to let you know I'm seeking a total cash compensation package, in the $110,000 range or whatever it is, or in around 110. And see, is that something that you would feel comfortable with? And they can say yes or no. And then, that's the rest of what I said applies. They might say, well, we can't, we can't do 110, we can do 100, that kind of thing. And then you can say, well, can we talk about benefits? But the point is you can open up the story, right? By talking about what you need. Or if you want to be a little more bold, you can say, would you feel comfortable sharing the range to see if we're in the same ballpark? Either is fine. And if they say, well, and if they flip it back onto you saying, well, would you tell me what you're looking for? Which again, 5 years ago was the normal thing. These days, hopefully they're a little bit more hip to the pay equity side of things and maybe are going to be more comfortable sharing what they're offering.
Yeah. Sandra, how was the benefits package?
The benefits package, it was good. They did really well with the medical. That was probably one of the better ones I'd seen in the last couple of years. So the employee may have paid, oh my goodness, I think it was like $1,000 deductible for a Cigna plan, and for employee only, it was like $55 per pay period, which was twice a month, which you don't usually see nowadays.
Yeah, yeah.
They had,
Yeah.
what was unusual is they didn't have, this company's based in Virginia. They didn't have a PTO. They had vacation time, which was 10 days, but then they had 7 days sick. So then of course that does balance out. The question I didn't ask was, can you carry over the sick at the end of the year? And they had nice holidays. It was 11 holidays. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That, I mean, it doesn't, replace salary, but that's another part of the total compensation package. Shira said I'm seeking a total compensation package in the range of, contributions to the 401k, the cost of the medical insurance, what's coming out of your pocket. If it's less than a previous job, then,
Yeah.
there's some ways to, look at that, and it just depends on the benefits package.
Right. And overall, it was a good benefits package. What was different with their 401k, I haven't seen in a while. They had a vesting period. I think it might have been, it was at least 4 months. Most of the companies are immediately vested from what I've seen.
Yeah.
These guys, you had to wait for 4 to 6 months. And in order to get a match, which was 3%, you had to be contributing the whole time, which I would have had to gotten more details on what that actually means.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I would say the benefits, they were good.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
that's posted.
That's the
Thanks.
blood.
At the end of the day, you make the best decision for you. That's what you got to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
And it's balance, right? Your needs and their needs. That's what
Yeah.
negotiation's all about with anybody in life, right?
Mhm.
Try to find the win-win.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's good that you're pushing a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of
Initially,
people just sort of take it and then that's it. You can't negotiate after that.
exactly. And yeah, and it's in your back of your mind, and you drive home, and it's a hybrid role. So 2 days remote, 3 days on site, and it's probably close to about 45 minutes each way. Could be longer with traffic, in general, probably about 40. So it's a decent drive too. So there's a lot of factors that would go into if you really don't price it right.
Yeah. So good. We've had a good salary chat. Sally, do you have a question for us?
I actually do, and I'm glad that this is a question and answer session. Last night I got a request for a job interview, and they did describe the fact that the interview will be a STAR process.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really funny because I sat in another career network marketing and last night, and they were talking about the STAR process.
Mm-hmm.
And I had not really heard about it before.
Mm-hmm.
The company gave me a video, a YouTube video to watch so that I'm prepared for this interview. And this interview, I find out, is going to be Monday afternoon. So I'm like a little bit nervous about it, and I kind of am actually surprised I even got the interview because it's Director of Education, Diversity and Inclusion. And a lot of my background is in education and adult education, adult learning principles, but I don't know really anything about diversity and inclusion. I'm not quite sure
Interesting.
is relatively new, and I haven't had really formal training on it, but I'm very aware of what's going on and who's, and being respectful of people. And so I'm kind of very nervous about, first of all, the STAR process.
Mhm.
And my theory going into this process is to have four or five situations
Mhm.
to start with, and prepare for those situations, the task, the action, and
Mhm.
the response. But I'm just wondering, does anybody have any feedback
We
and
we
how
do.
I should approach
We-
this?
I would say myself, Vern, and Sandra have what to say about this. I have a little speech, but I will defer for the moment. Vern or Sandra, do you want to start out?
Well, you're right to think about the stories, and let's make sure we're all on the same page. So STAR, situation,
Task,
Task,
action,
task,
action,
actions,
result.
results. Yeah, okay.
response.
Because
Yes.
there's a number of acronyms, okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
That all say basically the same
Same
thing.
thing.
So yeah, the over the weekend, you should be, literally writing,
Mhm.
stories of typically, your accomplishments. You've got a resume, you've got accomplishments, and all of those one-line bullets, typically there's a story behind that.
Mhm.
I mean, on
Mhm.
the resume, you're forced to put one line, initiated this program with these kinds of results. Well, how did it get started? What was the situation? What were the tasks or the actions and the results? How did you write the whole story around that? You rehearse it, so you're comfortable when that question comes up in the interview. The challenge that I think you have that you described is if they're asking you questions about diversity, equity, and inclusion, do you have any stories that relate directly to your experience in that area? Do you know any? I mean, do you know anything more about that in terms of why they chose you to have the interview, or?
Not really. I just applied for the position because I like the company. I like what they stand for. I have experience, and it's a radiology organization, and I have a lot of experience in radiology. And one of the things that when I left the American College of Radiology was they were looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion, because there are too many white radiologists, and they're not moving into different forms. And one of the things, and I can talk about this situation, but my committee that I worked with was very diverse, and it was because my committee members were very cognizant about being a diverse group of people, which was very unusual because most of the other committees were all white radiologists. So that is one thing. But as far as, I know that in Leadership Arlington, which I used to be a part of, very active in, they had a course on diversity, equity, and inclusion that I've always wanted to take, but it's $4,000 or $5,000, and that's a lot of money right now, especially when you're unemployed. And I've been unemployed for somewhat of 3 years, employed, unemployed, etc. Anyway, so $4,000 is a lot to take for that course. And so I'm not quite sure where you get formal education that's not going to cost you an arm and a leg on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm not sure if what they're talking about is formal education, and how do you go about doing it. So anyway,
I have a thought. I have a thought on that, but Scott just raised his hand, and so does Sandra. So
Yes.
we'll let them both.
Yeah.
First.
Okay.
Scott, you're on
I
mute.
had a separate question, so you can finish
Oh,
her up and
separate
come back if
question?
you want.
Okay, sure. Sandra, did you want to comment on salaries, or was it a separate question? You're on mute.
Okay. Just a couple questions, comments, Sally. So let's just start with the one you mentioned. Yes, there's lots of places, several places you can get resources. One is WIOA, and I can, put that into chat. Or we
Sure.
can Google it, and that's done by the various like in the state of Virginia and in Maryland, DC will have something comparable based on how long you've been unemployed and based on other factors. They give you X number of amount. It might be 3,000, it might be 4,000 to take courses or certs that are applicable to your career field or where you want to transition to. And you don't have to pay them back. Okay, that's one resource. But then there's also others, like your formal association. Like let's say I'm in SHRM, so there's DE&I courses you can take. Some they charge, some are free, and then of course LinkedIn Learning has a whole lot. And then go to your library. They have a whole plethora of electronic resources on all kinds of things, and there should be classes that you can get information on there. But then I think when Vern was talking to you about the STAR, and then you started talking about what you had done in your previous role with radiology, you were starting to build your STAR stories. So particularly I was listening to it and was intrigued when you're talking about, yes, it is a mostly white male radiologists that you work with, and you were with the company organization and you were on this committee and they were trying to diversify, and you were doing that 3 years ago. So that's exciting. So you've got some of the ingredients and you've got those STAR stories there. So certainly practice it and refine it. And it doesn't, because I encountered this similar for DE&I. It was, to me, it's part of my brand, as we say, it's the right thing to do. It's just the right thing to do. So
yes.
And I've done that for years. So now people are really making it mandatory, which is great. So I had to come up with examples on where I had done it, where it wasn't formalized and we didn't have ratios and metrics associated with, and you just talked about a story and an environment where you've done that. So they may have gleaned that from your resume or your profile, and that might be why they called you. But also sometimes, even if you haven't done it quite formally or developed a program, they know your passion. They know that it's important to you. They know that you've participated with these board members and you're committed to it. So they may see that and say, look, we can train her for this. It's to do it formally. We can train Sally, but you can't change her heart. So that may be one reason why.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So Sally, in the chat box, I put down a certificate program from the University of South Florida. Myself and a whole bunch of other people in the country last spring took this class.
Okay.
It's 14 hours. Now, at the time, they offered the certificate for free because they were just trying to pilot it. Now, you can take the course for free, but if you want the certificate, it's $99. It's 14 hours worth of lectures. So again, feel free to avail yourself of that. Like, I mean, lots of people in the country took it all at once. It was just kind of a phenom that they did. But it was really good. I actually learned quite a bit. They gave a really, really good overview of everything. If you want the certificate, the badge on your LinkedIn profile, that's where you pay the $99.
Okay.
But if even if you just Google free DEI certificates, I just did that, and there's a whole bunch of things that came up. So you should be able to have all kinds of free resources.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful news. I'm often looking for DEI courses because I'm always interested in it. And I just don't know. I live by myself. It's not like I'm with a community of a lot of community of people from diverse resources, and that's not what I want to do in my life, but I don't know how to explain that to other people. So anyway, thank you. That would be
You're
helpful.
welcome. It's a lot. There's a lot of stuff out there.
Good.
All right, Scott.
Hello, good morning, everybody. How is everyone?
Well,
Good. How you doing, Scott?
Okay, actually, it's a simple minor question.
Okay.
On a 2-page resume, I have my name and page 2 of 2 at the second page in case it becomes separated.
Mhm.
Is it better to have a telephone number or an email address along with that?
Actually, if you're gonna do it that way, I would do because you're doing it as a header. I do both. So you have your name, a pipeline, your email address, pipeline, and your phone number. Just all in one heading. It's the same, actually, it's the same thing that you'd put at the top of your resume, right? Your name, your email, and your phone.
Yeah, pipeline's good. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried all the information and I didn't like the way it looked or
I
laid
just
out.
do it as a one line across in the header
Okay.
or footer, whatever you like.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Other questions, thoughts, ideas, best practices, topics? We could just have a whole talk about a topic. Retha or Sally, anything
A
that's
question, Shira, is how many smart story, sorry, how many star stories should we have?
yeah, thanks. I'll actually, then it reminds me, Sally, I wanted to talk a little bit about my own version of the answer to that question that Vern was talking about. So yeah, I would say, have up to a half dozen at the ready, because you never know what kind of story is going to come at you. But let's back up a skosh, all right? And let's talk about why some employers are asking for star stories. So the star story response is a response to what interviewers call behavioral interviewing questions. There are two kinds of classic interview questions: behavioral and situational. A behavioral interview question is past-based. It pulls out a story from your past that says to the employer, I am going to demonstrate one of my behavioral skills, or more than one. Some people call them soft skills. The how you do what you do. Things like your ability to be analytical, a team player, critical thinker, influencing without authority. There's a million of them, right? You're couching the behavior into a real life story. So once upon a time in a land far, far away, right? It was 2 years ago, the sky was blue, there were 3 clouds in it. It was the real story, it was real life, this thing happened. And at that time, here's what was going on. This and this and this and this. The problem was, right? Here's what was, and I needed to do X. And so what I did was, and then you're gonna talk about this, the action, but you're framing it also, you're answering the question based upon your behavior. So the question is going to be, describe a time when you, or tell me about a time when you used your critical thinking skill, as an example, used your critical thinking skills to solve a huge challenge, or where you had to influence without authority, or where you missed a deadline and then you had to, or when you failed and learned from it, whatever. And there's again, there's a million of those questions, and you can Google them, typical behavioral interview questions. And you take one of those stories, 3, 4, 5 stories that you've remembered, and and what you do is you frame the story around that behavior. But you have to know your stories well enough to do that. I'm sorry, Fern, did you say something?
So let me chime in here. So
Yes.
the behavioral interviewing from the employer's standpoint, the theory is based on how you behaved in this situation in the past.
Yes.
That's a predictor of how you'll behave in this situation when you're working
That's
for
right.
us.
That's right.
Okay. And so that's the rationale behind the
That's right.
behavioral interviewing question.
That's right.
Tell me about a time when you
That's
did
right.
X. And
Right.
and from the employer, they're thinking about questions. Here's the types of things this job will entail.
Right.
And so tell me about a time when you use your critical thinking skills, because critical thinking is
It's going to be important in the
for this job, in this
That's
role.
exactly right. That's
Yeah.
why they're doing it. So if you know your stories really well, you should be able to take your story and stretch it out, almost like an accordion. Think of it that way. Each of your stories has a whole bunch of behavioral skills layered into it. You just don't realize it because you lived the story. But when you think about that story, think about it from different angles. Well, when I was in the midst of this challenge, this star story, I was exhibiting this soft skill and that soft skill, and I was using look, just think about who you were being, what was happening. And by the way, the more dramatic the story, the more interesting it is for the employer and more memorable it is. Think of it like watching a movie or reading a book. There's always an arc to the story. There's always a problem that was being solved by somebody. There's always a hero or a heroine, okay? So you're being the heroine in this case.
And
Superman, Superwoman,
and the other
cape
key
on your
part-
back, right?
Yeah.
And you are flying it and you, right, saving Lois Lane kind of thing, okay? Because there was a drama. There's Vern mentioned earlier that there are different acronyms for this. Yes, some people call it STAR, situation, task, action, result. Actually, the R is for result. Some people call it SAR, situation, action, result, PAR, problem, action, result. The one that I really like, I think it's even more helpful, is called CAB, like a taxi cab. Challenge, action, benefit. What you're talking about here is, what was the challenge the organization was facing, the action you took, and how the organization benefited from your work at the end. That really helps to frame it, I think, a little bit better than just the situation task thing, because you're talking about outcomes. You're talking about what's the benefit, right? And it's the one we see the challenge for the organization. It could be, so actually, Vern and I are both association consultants, so we know your world very well. So in your case, it could be, for example, let's say the story was at your time at radiology, right? So you could talk about, well, the organization was facing, you could talk about the membership, you could talk about sponsors, you could talk about allied organizations, like whatever the constituent is that was being impacted by this thing. Make sense? That's who the challenge was. And you had to step in because whatever your role was, you did this, you had some great activities, actions. And then here's how that group of people benefited from your work.
What was the outcome? What was the result?
Mm-hmm.
How did you improve the situation? That's
Right.
kind of the punchline at the end of any of these, whatever acronym you use.
Punchline. How did it resolve? Think about, again, a movie or a book. We especially in this country, we love it when things, right? The couple gets together at the end, they go off in the sunset, whatever. The chase scene is over. Okay, we feel better. That's what that last letter is about. Resolve it. But again, if there's a little drama, that's even better, because it shows you were able to really, showcase some really great skills in a crisis moment. But also, again, it's memorable. You want to leave them with a story that they're going to remember. So practicing these things are good. Are you, since you mentioned CNM, are you part of one of the accountability groups? Are you familiar with this? You're on mute, Sally.
Thank you. I just signed up for one,
Good.
but I have gone to CNM in the past, and I'm starting up again. So like this week is like the first week I've really been back and active on.
That's a good group for you. In addition, my understanding, and I don't remember who it is, maybe Sandra, there's somebody at CNM, I believe, who specifically helps with interview questions, like interview role playing.
Yeah, somebody told me his name was Kevin Conopy.
Kevin Conopy.
Yes, he
That's
is.
right.
He has sessions on Tuesday afternoons
Okay.
from 2 to.
And I heard that he's a real
4:30.
toughie, but good.
Yeah.
It's okay.
No, tough's good. You want tough.
Yeah.
Creeth is right. Tough and good. Yeah.
Yeah, so that should be helpful. And then the other thing, Sally, is that you want to make sure that, and this is so important, man, I cannot emphasize this enough. You've got to make sure that the story you are sharing directly relates to the job you are applying for.
Okay.
If you take away nothing else, please take away that.
Mhm.
If it does not, it will cause brand confusion. Let me give you an example.
Sure.
Years ago, I use this story all the time. Many years ago, I was recruiting. I'm a recruiter too, right? So I was recruiting for an executive assistant. And the employer was asking the candidate a very normal question. So, candidate, what's your greatest accomplishment? Candidate very innocently shared this beautiful story about how she had planned this big conference. Great story. Left the employer thinking that she wanted to be a meeting planner.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. You got to watch those stories. So even though we're saying have 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever stories in your pocket, you need to pick those stories based upon the job that you are applying.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Stay on message. Really.
Yeah, look at the key, you know, if you've got the job description, the first 3 or 4 or 5 bullets, what are the key skills, the key behaviors they're looking for, and try to make sure you've crafted stories, if you can, related to those,
That's right.
and rehearse those, because a great story that doesn't relate to the job is not going to help you in the interview.
Sure.
The
Yeah.
employer is trying to
Yeah.
minimize the risk. So
Yeah.
you have to have stories that show them that you are going to have as minimal of a learning curve as possible.
Sure. Okay.
Hope that
Thank you. I find this very interesting. I'm actually completely surprised I even got this interview. So I didn't think I was appropriate for it, but I'm going to learn and I'm going to make sure I get it.
Well, more you can prepare, the better. And also look for yourself. Also, if you're concerned at all about that part of the role, ask them and say, look,
Yes.
what's the history of the DEI part of this role? What are you expecting? Since I don't really have that much of a background in it, are you okay with a learning curve? What are your expectations? Now, look, a lot of associations have been
Okay.
grappling with this topic for a while now, and some are fairly
Yes.
progressed, and some are like just two inches into it.
Mhm.
I don't know what their situation is, but you need to ask them, what's the genesis of this? What's the outcome? What are you expecting? To see if it's even something that you
Mhm.
feel
Yeah.
comfortable jumping into,
Yes. Mhm.
I'm going to put in the chat box a link here to a page on my website that has a whole bunch of free videos, one of which is on interviewing. And interestingly, it was one I gave to CNM, interviews that land the offer. It's about an 1.5-hour presentation, but there are a whole bunch of presentations on there, from resume, branding, LinkedIn, all kinds of stuff. If you'd like to avail yourself of it. So
Okay.
just one more resource for you. Okay. Other topics? Still, I know that you typically are just here. I know you're gainfully employed and you're not looking for a job, but is there any topic that you'd like us to talk about? Still, you're on mute. Maybe still stepped away. Okay, that's fine. Vern, I know that you do some career coaching. Anything that's come up for you recently that you'd like to talk about with your coaching clients?
Let me think.
I actually have one now that I'm thinking about it myself. There's something I
Okay,
want
go
to share.
ahead. You go ahead.
So,
Go ahead.
okay, so here's the benefits of networking, okay, in LinkedIn. So this is how important it is to have a LinkedIn profile, and a good one. So I've been doing a search, association search right now for a meeting planner. And I did what most headhunters do. Went on LinkedIn, used the search feature, and went to look for association meeting planners. And I just reached out to far and wide and, contacted all these people. Okay. And, got some candidates, whatever. Anyway, the other day I get this email from a candidate She emails me, not through LinkedIn, just in a regular email. And she applies for the job and she CC'd the employer, my contact, a woman named Nancy. So the employer's name is Nancy. She's the hiring manager. She CC'd Nancy, and not just CC'd Nancy, she CC'd Nancy's Gmail, like her personal address. And I'm thinking to myself, this is interesting. Why would she CC the employer? And it's the employer's personal address. I interviewed the candidate. She's great. And at the end of it, I said, by the way, how did you hear about this opportunity? She said, well, she says, Nancy, right, the employer, is friends with 2 executives of a charitable nonprofit that this candidate is connected to. Okay, so this candidate knows these 2 executives. The 2 executives' names are Deb and Ingrid. Okay, so this candidate knows Deb and Ingrid, who work for this charitable nonprofit that my client also knows. So my client, Nancy, knows Deb and Ingrid. This person knows Deb and Ingrid. My client, just to support my recruiting efforts, she sent out the posting to her network, including Deb and Ingrid. Deb and Ingrid sent this posting to my client. And here's the interesting thing. Number one, the power of networking. Had Deb and Ingrid not known that this candidate was looking for a job, they would not have sent it to her. So it's the importance of you letting everybody in your network know that you're looking. But here's the more important thing. Turns out, because I said to the candidate, I'm like, but I did a full LinkedIn search. I said I didn't find the candidate says, I don't have a LinkedIn profile. Had Deb and Ingrid not known that this candidate was looking, she never would have heard about this job because she didn't have a LinkedIn profile and couldn't be found by me. Okay. You need to have a strong LinkedIn profile that has keyword focus, where you're searchable. Because people like me are looking for people like you all the time. And if you're not there, or if you're there but just don't have a really robust profile, we can't find you. And then then the only way you can hear about the opportunity is through your network. Okay, so it's 2 things: power of networking and the power of having a good LinkedIn profile.
And I run a company called Contacts Count, and our tagline for the logo is the power of human connection.
Right.
And one of the competencies that we have in when we're working with people on networking and building their skills is called communicate your expertise. And every opportunity that you have to communicate your expertise, not in a bragging way, but in an appropriate way at the appropriate opportunity, the logic is really pretty simple. The more you teach others about who you are, what you're about, what you like, what you don't like, what your career aspirations are, the greater likelihood someone, someplace, somewhere is going to be able to help you in some way.
Right.
So in Shira's example, it was, these 2 executives, Deb and Ingrid, who knew this candidate and knew of her skills and abilities, and that's why they sent her the job, because they knew her, they'd seen her skills and behaviors and knew she might be a great match for this job. So,
and can I also say just another layer in this? When I told my client that, the candidate was referred by Deb and Ingrid, the client was like, oh, if Deb and Ingrid referred this person, she must be good.
Good. Right.
There was a credibility factor there anyway.
Yeah.
On top of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So you need to let your trusted network know what you were looking for, so that they can keep you in mind and they can refer things. It helps you to get noticed. It helps with credibility. I mean, you need to keep networking. Really important.
And Shira and I say this all the time, and it's important because the 2 of you are newer to this. 80% of the jobs are not posted anywhere.
That's right.
They're part of what's called the hidden job market.
That's right.
And the only way you'd ever find out about a job in the hidden job market is through your network, somehow, some way.
Right. Exactly. Which and if you go to that page on my website, that link, one of the videos is called Accessing the Hidden Job Market. In fact, I spoke on it. I just spoke on it at CNM the other night, so they recorded it, but it's also on my website. It's all about networking. So speaking of, I know we're still a small little group here, but Sally, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what you are looking for, so we can keep you in mind, and then Sandra as well? You're on mute.
Sorry, thought I had hit the button. I'm actually looking for a medical education association. Sandra's asking me to link into her. I will do that. So in a medical education association job in that respect, I have done 8 or 9 years at the American College of Radiology. I did a lot of work with clinical trial people, clinical research coordinators and associates, physician investigators. And so I do a lot of that type of training and adult education, adult learning principles.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's good. It's interesting. The meeting planner position I have is with the medical society, but it's the logistics side. It's the hotel and
Okay.
what I call the color of the
Yes.
napkins, that stuff, not the educational learning
Y-
side.
Yeah, and that's very nice. And I have done that in the past,
But
but
it's
I'm
not-
really
yeah.
doing the content development and the adult education is quite different,
100%.
and I truly enjoy it. But
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah, no, education professionals and meeting planners are in two completely separate lanes. Although sometimes
Yes.
in some
So-
small associations, they're mixed, right?
yes,
You
we
have
do
to be,
have
but
to work.
typically you enjoy one or the other.
Yeah, we have to work closely together.
Yeah.
For sure.
So based on what we just said, Sally, okay?
Yes.
The more you communicate your expertise or what you want to other people, the greater likelihood so they can help you in some way, okay? So
Yes,
take a look at the College of Preventative Medicine,
American
Yes.
College of ACP.
American
Yes.
College of you know, and the only reason that I say that is a former person who was on this call for a long
Melissa
time,
Ferrari.
and Shira and I know very well. Melissa Ferrari has a pretty senior role there. I don't know if they have any open positions, but
yes,
just go to the
Mhm.
website and see if they do. And if they do, then obviously, you know, let Shira I know, and we can
You know-
introduce you to Melissa.
I will tell you, I did have an interview with them not too long ago.
Oh, okay.
And I was one of the last people. And again, it's one of those interviewing skills is I've had a very hard last 3 years. I've lost 2 jobs in the last 3 years. So it's been a little difficult to explain that through that. And I talked to, when I was speaking to the CEO, I think it was the CEO that I was talking to, she did say that it really became apparent that I'm very nervous about this
Oh,
Okay.
job breakage, even though that 2020 came and I lost that job because nobody knew who I was. And it was
Mhm.
kind of a strange thing. So it definitely is the interviewing skill situation because there was a really good job there and I just didn't get it.
Okay.
that's something that actually you're on the Bob K Coffee, which is how you heard about this, right?
I'm
that
sorry.
was- you were
Yes.
on- yeah, right, Bob's. That was actually something, I guess it was 2 weeks ago I was on it and we talked about this very thing.
Yes.
Around, were you on that call? Around,
No.
yeah. Around how do you talk about you called it a breakup, right?
Yes.
In a non-emotional way. It's
Mhm.
incredibly important, Sally, to be able
Yes.
to practice that in a way that diffuses, that takes away the emotion and
Mhm.
focuses on a short, simple, clear answer.
Yes.
That has to do not necessarily with you, but with just the circumstances. So
Mhm.
you're not, A, you're not too emotional. B, you're not throwing the organization under the bus.
Mhm.
B, you are speaking of it in a quick, succinct way, but quickly moving
Okay.
on from it. Okay.
Sure.
I left because of blah, blah, but what I'm looking for is
Yes.
you don't fixate on it and you come in with confidence. Oh, thanks for
Yes.
asking that question. Well, let me tell you, in basically one line or 2 lines, whether it was a COVID related thing or the organization had new leadership or, it didn't seem like exactly the right match with my skill set. But now what I'm looking for is, and why I'm here
Mhm.
interviewing with you is But
Mhm.
you have to come
Yes.
in with a level of confidence. So she obviously picked up on your nervousness. That's
Yes.
important to you got to push that aside. You got to be as
Yeah.
objective as possible, even though I know it's a subjective topic.
Mhm.
Speak
Mhm.
about it as if it were happening to somebody else.
Yeah.
Just
Yes.
remove yourself from it, like objectively. This
Yeah.
is the situation. Bing, 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 ba, ba, ba. Move on. And then your body language is confident. Your tone of voice is confident. You
Yeah.
are like, yep, sure. Thanks for asking. Ba, ba, ba. Now, here's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's a bit unusual for an interview to give you that feedback, and I think you should
Yes.
see that as a
Uh-huh.
gift, really,
It
Uh-huh.
really is.
because again, if you didn't get that feedback, you know, it's that feedback's critical to you because you recognize it now, and you recognize I've got to get
Yes.
better at this. So
Yes.
yeah,
Hmm. Yeah. And that's part of the reason why I came here, because I
good.
know that it has really eaten me alive, and I do
Mm.
need to get over that. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
If you'd like to, Sally, if you want to reach out to me offline, I'm happy to have a quick chat with you and see if we
Okay.
can very quickly kind of, get you into a better mind frame.
Yeah, sure. I would be happy
Okay.
to do that.
Yeah. So
I
go
will,
ahead and reach out.
I will write to you as well. Sandra is also being very helpful here.
Well,
So,
and just some of the things you've already said, Sally, the fact that you're going to write some stories over this weekend for the
yes,
for the interview, writing the stories, rehearsing the stories, that's going to help build your confidence
That's
as well.
right. That's right.
sure. Yes.
Reminding
I
yourself
think
of the
so.
good work you've done.
Yes,
Mhm.
I will do that.
Yeah, and understand too that people transition out of jobs, either they transition or are transitioned out of jobs for all kinds of reasons. May have nothing to do with your intrinsic competencies. It could have just been a wrong fit, the wrong time, the wrong whatever.
Yes.
So, so
Mhm.
it's you still are the same wonderful professional you've always been. But like
Yes.
circumstances happen, right?
Yes.
Got to remind
Mhm.
yourself of that.
Okay. I will do that.
Yeah.
Thank you all. I need to get off the phone now too. So,
Okay.
I do appreciate it. So this has been
You're
very, very
welcome.
helpful, and maybe I'll
Very
come back
welcome.
next week.
Yeah, well, and anytime you like. Oh, and by the
All right.
way, the Zoom registration link you filled out, you only had to do that one time. You can grab that
Okay.
URL and for up until like next June, it's applicable, so you can keep using it.
Okay. That's great. Good.
Sally.
Thank you.
Good to
Alright.
see you.
Take care.
Take care,
Bye.
Sally.
Bye-bye. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap up here. We'll officially close out, and if you'd like to stay on for the prayer call, you're certainly welcome. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next week.